Hi, everyone. This is Julie LaRocque with the South Florida Water Management District. We are trying to get the webinar started. I wanted to wait just a moment to see if the special master was going to be able to join us. So if you could give us just a moment, we'll kind of get that started. I see everybody else is filtering into the meeting, so glad to have you here. This is Julie LaRocque again. Quick question for the TOC reps. Are you guys okay if we get started while we're waiting for Mr. Barquette?
Hey, Julie, this is Frank. I'm fine with moving forward.
Yeah, I think the parts that he may be most interested in are a little bit later in the meeting. So thank you, Frank. Why don't we go ahead and get started, because I don't want to hold everybody up in this window of silence here while we're waiting. So welcome, everybody, to the quarterly Technical Oversight Committee meeting. This is our regular quarterly meeting, and I don't know, I think this is the third maybe meeting we've held via Zoom. So we're still getting used to changes in technology. I would ask, just as a matter of ease for the listeners, if the TOC reps could please introduce themselves. So you guys need to unmute and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, if you would, so that everybody knows what your voice sounds like this morning. That would be great.
Good morning, Donato Surratt, Everglades National Park.
This is Frank Powell, Department of Environmental Protection.
Lori Miller with Loxahatchee Refuge.
Dan Crawford with the Corps of Engineers.
Great, thank you, everybody. And for the rest of you that are on the phone, if you're a so-called participant, I'm just going to kind of run through the list real quick to let folks know who's on the line, because it's a little cumbersome sometimes to continually mute and unmute. And from what I'm seeing on my screen on this end here, it looks like Mr. Barquette is in the process of joining us. So we've got everybody, yay. Mr. Barquette, would you like to unmute yourself real quickly and just say hello so we can hear you?
Yes, hello, hello, hello.
Hey, great to have you here. Thank you so much. Other folks that we have on the line from DEP, I see Ed Smith and Paul Julian. From the Corps, we've got Ken Bradshaw, who will be speaking a little bit later during the meeting. John Madden, Stuart Van Horn are here from the district. There's the background people that work for me, so you guys just know they're there. pretend they're sitting in the back of the auditorium. Bill Walker is on the line. And I think that's all I'm seeing. We also have a list of about 40 public attendees. You guys have dialed in as attendees, and so we've got to mute and unmute you and look for hand raising and some other things like that. But I see representation from all the agencies, including DOJ, as well as the federal agencies that have already had their reps speak up. So if that's okay, I'll leave the attendees at that. Let's see, just a reminder for everybody who's on the phone, you may have multiple ways of muting and unmuting yourself. I certainly do on my end. So please try to mute yourself when you're not talking so that we could avoid extra background information. That's always an adventure. And I keep wondering when my lawn guy is going to show up, but hopefully it's not during the meeting today. If you are wishing to speak, you need to use the raise hand feature, please. If you're using your phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. If you are also using your phone, you can unmute your microphone by pressing *6. And again, we ask, especially for the public members, to give us your name and so forth when you speak. We'll take some public comment before we vote on anything, but I don't really see, aside from the meeting notes, I'm not sure we're voting on anything today. So we will definitely take comment at the end of the meeting from folks who aren't panelists, and we always appreciate your comments. So please don't let this format stifle you at all. We are trying to still get comments and be out in the public as best we can and still adhere to some of the COVID-19 guidelines. I don't know why we call it social distancing. It's physical distancing. We won't be taking written public comment today. But again, you guys can provide comment during the comment period. We talked about the raise hand feature, I think. For the most part, the chat feature is disabled. So if you're having technical difficulties of some kind, you may want to use chat for that. But otherwise, we don't have a way of recording chat effectively for public purposes. Normally, we don't respond to comments, public comments during the meeting, but if there's a question that you have and we can get back to you, we'll try to do that. For the reps, we're going to do our best to try to get action items rounded up at the end of the meeting or within the next week or so to try to keep things on track for the next meeting. And then I'm actually going to look at the TOC website now and just kind of run down all the items that are on the web page. So on the main web page, we've got a couple of things that are a little different. There's the normal data table. So there's the refuge compliance table. There's a Shark River Slough tracking report. And you'll see in the link on the web page, it says method 1.5. So this is using the calculation methods that were recommended by us and approved by our principals. So that's method 1.5 is what we're calling it. I think as soon as we get a chance, we'll post a kind of formal, here's the last time you get to see the old methods piece so that we can kind of move forward with only one set of tracking numbers. Same thing with Taylor, Slough, and Coastal Basins. A tracking report is method 3. So our folks are morphing over to only doing this tracking by the method we agreed on at the last meeting. The settlement agreement report, the QA report, and the data associated with the QA report are all posted on the webpage. And for read-aheads, there aren't very many, but we have a few. So there's the draft meeting notes from the August meeting. There's the agenda that we're using today, and 2 sets of slides. One of them is the quarterly report that John will be presenting, and then the other one is a combination of slides for agenda item number 3, which is going to be briefed out by Ken Bradshaw and John Madden. So those are all posted out there this morning. And I think that's all we have for that. So there should be some instructions. If for some reason you're here in Zoom, but you need to know how to get here, those are out there too. And that is that for opening business and so forth. Do we have anybody who wishes to make an agenda modification? Are you guys good with the agenda the way we have it finalized at the moment?
This is Dan. Julie, I'm okay with the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm assuming if you don't speak up, you're okay with the agenda. How's that sound? You guys all right with that?
Yes, Julie, and I'm okay with the agenda as well. This is Lori.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. All right, now we get to go to our actual next agenda item, which is to approve the meeting summary from August. I hope you guys have had a chance to look through this. It was a little complicated to try to get these notes together. Do I have anybody changes or a motion to approve the meeting notes?
This is Donato. I would like to make a minor modification, well, 2 minor modifications. First,
Sure.
Whoever took these notes and took the time to make them narrative, that was a really good job.
Thank you, Chris King.
Who is it?
Chris King.
Chris King. Good job, Chris King. So on page 4, close to the top, the second paragraph, at the end of that paragraph, the paragraph starts regarding the sediment study.
Yeah.
It says Donato said a phase 2 of the study has been initiated, ... It's making it sound like there are 2 studies that are happening next, but it's only one phase 2 study, and it's going to include the sediment sampling and a cross-section analysis. So if that can just be corrected.
So should it really say the next phase of the study?
Yeah, that would work. But the second part of that sentence says another study will be conducted, which makes it sound like there's 2 studies.
Oh, okay. And
So
is this other study, is that actually the phase 2? Is that what you're saying?
But phase 2 will include the sediment sampling, and it will also include the cross-sectional water sampling. So
Okay.
Collects more sediment samples than phase 1. And you could just strike another study.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out here on the fly. I like to pretend I'm a speed reader, but okay, yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so we'll delete another study. That's great. Thank you. What else do you have?
All right, on page 5 at the top, in the second or number 2, increasing flows to EMP to greater than 1,300,000 acre feet annually, that needs to also be linked to the CEPP. So I didn't make that up. So that this is a part of what came out of CEPP.
The long-term activities, blah, 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 increasing flows to EMP. I guess is that CEPP or CERP?
Sorry, Donato, you're fading in and out a little bit.
Oh, no, it was initially in CERP.
Okay. So maybe we just add as envisioned under CERP for that one also.
Please.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have comments on the notes?
Julie, this is Frank with DEP. I do not have any changes, and I would look to approve the notes with Donato's changes.
Okay, thank you. Do I either have other changes or a second to Frank's note?
This is Lori. I'll second.
Yep. This is Dan. I have no additional changes with Donato's edits.
Okay, I don't either. So Donato, thank you for your edits, and we will incorporate those and finalize the notes per everybody's agreement here. So thanks, guys. And I'll echo Donato's thanks to Chris King, who labors to get these notes together for us. Chris does a great job, so we always appreciate him doing that for us. All right, next item is the second quarter of the calendar year settlement agreement report. So John Madden, if you could please do your thing, that would be great.
Very good. Let's see. Is everybody else seeing a screen inside a screen like I am?
I'm just seeing your non-expanded.
Yes, are. Maybe that's not a problem. Let's see what happens.
Lisette, can you pass control over to me again? Kind of take it away and then do it again. I think Devon mentioned this can be an issue. And maximize the screen and bring up presentation mode if you can.
Yeah, hey, Lisette. Okay, yes. I was about to tell you, just stop sharing and reshare the screen with the presentation. And if we don't get it this time, then I'll just open it on my computer because I've got it here as well. So no worries. So I'm a little excited that I got some new material to present and explain this quarter. As Julie mentioned, all the methods we've been presenting, we boiled it down, and in August at the meeting, we agreed to a single method 1.5 for Shark River Slough and method 3 for Taylor Slough and coastal basins. So I'll be presenting just those. We did our best to, with the tracking charts on the 36 months, figure out a way to kind of display that what had already been presented previously and the new. Lisette, why don't you just let me maybe stop sharing your screen? Or I don't know if I can just share myself. Okay. If you stop sharing, then I can probably.
Yeah, it looks like we're having a little network congestion there.
All right. Now, I go to presentation mode. We'll see what happens. You're seeing the notes slide or the full screen?
You're in full screen presentation mode.
Excellent. Okay. Sorry for the delay, folks. So I'm going to be reporting on the second quarter of, which adds on months of April, May, and June of 2020 for the 3 areas we report on. As a reminder, we are looking at these 3 months for the Refuge compliance, the monthly test that's done, and then we're tracking the progress of Shark River Slough under Appendix A and Taylor Slough Coastal Basins under Appendix A. And flow data for Shark River Slough is provisional at this point in the year, with this data not getting finalized until probably March or April of 2021. So overall, as you can see, the table is somewhat simplified with just focusing on the methods that we're using. I'll go through more detail on subsequent slides, but the Refuge, all 3 of these months, the geometric mean TP concentration was lower than the long-term level. You can see the stages did dip down in May to below 15.8 on average of the 3 gauges that we use, and we were only able to collect 6 of the 14 sites for that particular month. And for Shark River Slough, this is method 1.5, and that is detailed on the subsequent slides a little bit more, but we can see as we progress from April, May to June, the TP levels were below the long-term limit in all those, and percent of sampling events greater than 10 part per billion were hovering a little bit below the guideline, which is good. We want it below the guideline. And flow was relatively low, around 600,000 acre feet for those 12-month periods ending again April, May, and June. For Taylor Slough coastal basins, as we've seen for a while, those concentrations, the fluid mean for the 12 months ending April, May, and June were well below the 11 part per billion, and hovered around 5, between 4.9 and 5.5 parts per billion, with just one sampling event in that 12-month period being above 10 part per million. So going in a little more detail on the Refuge, we see the 36 progress over the last 36 months, where the dots represent those measured geomean TP concentrations across the sites we're able to sample. And the red line is the long-term level, which we should stay below, and that is inversely proportional to the stage, which is shown by those blocks, because we just are measuring this on a single day, single sampling day out of each month. So we can see the stages have been fairly consistent. And I think I should probably grab my laser pointer here. Okay. And then this is the April, was it? April that stage went down quite a bit, but bounced right back up. One new piece of information we added as we're thinking about it is the 36-month average long-term level. So even though it was kind of could be calculated between this and the next slide, kind of gives you a comparison. You know, we're staying below the 7 part per billion target for this region in the consent decree, but also you get a comparison of what the actual computed long-term level average has been over this 36-month period. So, and the next slide gives you that difference of 2.8 part per billion between our 36-month average long-term level and the 36-month measured geomeans. We can see the difference for at least the past 30 months seems to be pretty significant, meaning we're staying below that long-term level, which again is a good thing. Now this is the part of the presentation where we include a little preliminary look ahead, and although these are provisional, I don't have any reason to think at this point they're going to change before the reporting of next quarter. So we can see that after June, obviously in the wet season, the stages increased. We got up to 17.2, a pretty good difference between these, and the long-term level went down to its minimum of 7.2 per the compliance equations in Appendix B. And we had the concentration over those 14 sites, the geomean was 7.8, which was above the 7.2. So that would be, we'll see next month after all the QA/QC work is done, but a potential excursion there for a single month. And as a reminder, the test is to have no more than 1 month in a 12-month period be above the long-term level. And it's been far more than 12 months since our previous, so we're okay at this point in time. And if necessary, we can discuss more in the future once we get more data. Now moving on to Shark River Slough, presented these numbers in the summary. I think we can see the long-term limit as the flows increase. It was fairly dry as far as inflows for the past 12 months, but as this number increases, our long-term limit decreases. But we've seen the flow aid mean going down as well in this period. Where we were last year, remember almost a year ago, we were talking about water year 19 and continue to, but we had exceeded the long-term limit by about half a part per billion. And that was method 1 being used at that point in time. So now we look at the individual structure flows, and like I said, it's been, you can see the magnitude of flows has been reduced since our very wet conditions a couple of years ago when stages were high coming into the water year. And you can see the flow at S356, this yellow area has increased, been able to increase its use. As we look at the individual structures, you can kind of see the magnitude. S12D, mind that the scale is a little bit higher here, so the actual flows at D were greater than C, B, and A over this period. And we had quite a period with no flow until right in June when rainfall and stages rose. S333 is more consistently flowing, as we had previously discussed. Now I'm going to spend a little time on this plot, the second chart down on slide number 10, that now kind of shows our new term in method 1.5, which is the yellow shaded 356 pumped inflows to the L29, the headwaters of Northeast Shark River Slough, that flow through S335, and that's determined on a daily basis. So we have the daily trace of 356 is the blue line, those are the pumps, so it kind of gets to a 400 CFS level at and drops down. The red trace is the gravity structure 335, which is carrying water from WCA3 along the eastern boundary of the conservation area down to the intersection with 356, where the canal also continues south and collects seepage outflow from the park. So this was the dilemma, was how to account for the flows that are from the WCAs. So our method 1.5 uses the minimum of these two on a daily basis. So you can see periods where early on there was significant flow through 335, but there was no pumping at 356. So that water passed along down to South Dade area, along the L31 and to the C111 area. When there was flow through 335 and there was pumping at 356, those are accounted as part of the volume going to Shark River Slough, specifically Northeast Shark River Slough. There are periods where 356 pumped more water than 356 was flowing. That means 356 is not only bringing in water from the conservation area to the north, but also some seepage return or local runoff from the South Dade area. Most significantly, you can see that in the wet season of 2019, where up the portion that came from WCAs is accounted for in the long-term limit, and also the flow weighted mean concentration. All right, I think I covered that adequately. And the way we're showing that on the following plot, the 333 flows in this dark blue. Hopefully it's shown up as dark blue. It looks a little green on my screen, but a lot of the flow into, this is not showing the S12s at all. This is just the L29 reach east of 333. So there's most of the inflows to this reach come from 333, and this orange trace indicates how much goes out the other side, 334. So if we're doing water supply to South Dade or moving water through the L29 canal and it's not going to Shark River Slough, this is what it looks like. This is the dry season, the past dry season from January through April. Similarly, at the top, we have a yellow-ish area, which is the 356 flows that came from 335, and those are counted as part of the Shark River Slough inflows. And we did indicate above that in cyan, kind of a light blue, the 356 flows that came from other sources. So even though these flows did make it to Northeast Shark River Slough, they would not be accounted as part of the long-term limit calculation or the flow weighted mean calculation, as this was coming from sources other than the water conservation areas. So looking at the Shark River Slough, we got a couple new colors here. In the future, we'll end up with the same blue and cyan that we had historically. This is the method 1.5 that was approved in August. The bars represent the flow for those biweekly sampling events, and the cyan dots are the method 1.5 flow weighted mean concentrations on those sampling events. In the more yellow and brownish or tan color, these are what we presented historically under method 1. So these are what made up the compliance for the previous water year. And you can see some overlap because we're trying to show the last 12 months that made up the results we got for April in this reporting period. So you can see both. And here's an indication in maybe November of 2019, where there was flow at 356 from the WCAs that counted towards the 1.5 calculation of flow weighted mean concentration that were not included in the method 1. So that's where that difference comes in the flow weighted mean concentrations and the flows in that period. Same trace here of the biweekly flow weighted mean concentrations in the yellow dots and the cyan dots, with the cyan being the method 1.5 that we're tracking into the future. And these diamonds that we show, the solid blue are the method 1.5, and the historically reported method 1 are just outlined in blue with white fill. Taylor Slough coastal basins, consistently again below the long-term limit of 11, hovering around 5. The guideline of 53.1%, we're far below that for our sampling. You'll see the one sampling event in the recent 12-month periods above. Again, long-term, we're well below that 11. This region also shows generally drier conditions with definitely a spike in flow, and most of that at S18C. We had a high flow event in June of this year, where we've added G737 to the overall outflows. The 332D minus 322DX1 shows the total volume that's being accounted for 332 and downstream into Taylor Slough. There is a further calculation to kind of subdivide that 332D flow per a couple different concentrations where we have information. One of those being S328 downstream of 332D and flowing from that detention area into Everglades National Park. Through the end of June, we hadn't really seen any flow, although I did take a trip down in early October and was impressed with how much flow we saw going through that area. So I think next period we'll see significantly different patterns. This is that area I described downstream of 332D. So the 332D is the pump station complex that brings water into that detention area, and then two routes out of that that we monitor are 332DX1, which does not go to the park. So that the fuchsia or pink area does not count towards flow weighted mean, but the green does. It just gets assigned a different concentration that we actually monitor at S328, and that kind of describes the method 3 that we are reporting now. Similarly, we looked at the 12-month period here. These are, I think, weekly events. Yes, weekly events are plotted. That's why there are more dots. But in the last 3 months, method 3 is shown, and then for the 12 months in between, we're showing both method 1 and method 3, and then for the previous period, we have the historically reported method 1. So associated with that, looks like end of April event where we had a lot of flow at S18C. That's our one sampling event above 10 parts per billion during this 12-month period. Similarly, the 3 months tracking at the very end with the solid diamonds is our method 3. The previous 12-month rolling moving flow weighted means are represented by method 1 with the overlap in the actual sampling event results. And hopefully I was able to explain that well enough, but I'm ready for any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Do any of the reps have comments or questions here for John? I really appreciate you guys doing this with the multiple methods on the slides. That was great. I'm not seeing anybody unmuting, and oh, Lori's unmuting. Did you have a comment, Lori?
Yeah, Julie, I'm with you. I like being able to see the transition in the methodologies, but no questions. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Lori. Anybody else? All right, John Madden, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, let's move on to our next agenda item. And John, are you going to be flipping slides? Or are you going to take that over? Is that what we're doing? I think Lisette may be having some network congestion. So the next agenda item has to do with updating the compliance equations, and I know we just updated them, but as we have been discussing for many years, there are a lot of system changes ongoing under CERP, CEPP, and all these other mod waters, all these projects we're doing, and they affect our ability to monitor as well as do compliance calculations. So this is a two-parter. James Bradshaw, who we affectionately call Ken, is going to talk about CEPP South, and then John will pop in and discuss the 333 North structure. But these are both items that the TOC needs to be aware of, and what we're doing collectively for monitoring, and we'll need to incorporate possibly. I mean, you guys could always say no, but we'll need to deal with doing the Appendix A calculations as a result of these projects. So if you guys want to go ahead and take it away, Ken, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Julia. I like that you call me affectionately Ken. I appreciate that. Everybody can hear me, right?
Yes, we sure can. I always find it confusing when we use two different first names for the same person, Ken.
Keeps it interesting. All right, yeah, so as Julie said, this presentation is on the future compliance monitoring that we anticipate under the CEPP project, and this is really specifically related to the CEPP South components that we're going to talk about today. So John and I put together a set of slides that talks about two of the, I guess, most imminent features, but kind of in the overall scope of what CEPP is going to be as we move forward in the next probably, I don't know, 8 years or so, 7 or 8 years. So our objective here is to describe the monitoring plans for a couple of the features that have either been awarded, such as S333 North, which has been under construction for a couple of years, and then the L67A culverts and L67C interim gap that was just awarded under Contract 1 in September of this year. And in considering those two projects or contracts and then the future projects, start to look ahead and think about what the Appendix A monitoring requirements are going to be for Shark River Slough. So this is an overview of the overall CEPP project, and then the box here on the left is zoomed into CEPP South, and then the box over on the right is even further zoomed into CEPP South. And so these are the projects that are project components that are part of CEPP South. They're color coded by the contract. So the first one that was awarded that is a South Florida Water Management District contract is 3A, which is right here at the intersection of 67C and 67A. And then the contract 1, which are the 3 in the blue, are the ones that were just awarded here in October. And those are 3 500 CFS culverts that are along the 67A levee that would move water from WCA 3A into WCA 3B. And that project is anticipated to take about 4 years. But as the different culverts are completed, we could use them as the construction is ongoing. So, for example, we anticipate S333 to be completed first within the first couple of years. And so, if we could operate it and move water into the pocket or the western part of WCA 3B once it's complete. And also considering that if we move water in, we'd have to be able to get water out. So there's a plan for temporary pumps to be put in place until the L29 levee degrade that happens under contract 6 that would move water out of WCA 3B and into the L29 canal, which would then move into the park. So would need to be considered under any compliance calculations. And just to a couple of the other features here are the S356 pump station, which is in purple. That's number 2. And 3B, which is the gated spillway, S355W. Those are both in the L29 canal. Those are up next after contract 1. And then contract number 5, which is in the lighter purple color, that's the construction of the L67D Blue Shanty levee. We anticipate that to start to be awarded in 2024 and take about 3 years. And then the final piece is the contract 6, which is the L29 levee removal between the Blue Shanty levee and the L67A canal. And that would allow basically sheet flow of water to come down through the western part of WCA 3B and down into the park. So for the interim, temporary pumps could be installed until that contract 6 happens, and then they'd be taken out for that levee to be degraded. And so there's, I guess, an accounting needed for the water and the phosphorus going in under the pumped conditions, and then eventually the future without levee conditions. All right, advance. There we go. Oops. I went too far. Okay, so this is the contract 1 and the contract 3A features. So for contract 1, as I mentioned, it's the L67A 3 culverts at 500 CFS each along the alignment of the L67A levee. There's also an agricultural ditch that is between the L67A and L67C that's going to be backfilled. It's approximately 1.4 miles, and that's going to help to take away the channelized flow in that ditch and convert it to sheet flow to help it move south. And then there's the L29 temporary pumps. They will be placed in the green dots you see at the bottom. There's 3 potential locations, but we only plan to use 2 pumps and a total of 200 cubic feet per second. And those correspond also to vegetation management that is within the historic sloughs that helps to reestablish the hydraulic connectivity in those sloughs. And the idea here is that incorporating those pumps helps to start to train the water, if you will, to move south. And then that water, of course, is pumped over into the L29 canal, so it becomes part of the inflows to the Shark River Slough. And then the existing, within this window here is the brighter green down to the southwest corner. That's the existing S333 CNSF feature culvert, as well as the new almost completed construction of the S333 North under contract A, and that's a 1150 CFS gated spillway. And just for context here, The S252 that you see up on the L67A levee, that's what we call the decomp physical model feature. There's a gap downstream of that, and then the orange line north to south is the Blue Shanty levee, or what's going to be called L67D. And then the other feature that I didn't mention as part of the contract one is the S633 gap, and that's a gap in the L67C levee, 3,000 feet gap, and that helps to allow the water flowing from S633 down south through the western part of WCA3B. And eventually that whole levee segment between S333 and the Blue Shanty levee will be taken out, and that's part of contract 5, which is the construction of the Blue Shanty levee at the same time. So one of the, I guess, important parts of this is the operations of the features here. So what the slide shows is the interim operations of the 367A culverts and kind of how they're operated and what the constraints are. And so they'll be operated consistent with the existing decomp physical model criteria, which are limits to the inflows, cumulative inflows into WCA3B to 750 CFS. The structures are closed, just like decomp physical model S152 is closed if concentrations trend to increasing above 10 parts per billion. And there's also a constraint based on the stage levels in WCA3A and WCA3B. The two temporary pumps on the L29, they could be phased in because of the S633 approximately being ready to operate in 2 years, but the decomp physical model is currently still operational, and so there's potential to add those pumps as early as this year, or at least one of those pumps as early as this coming year, 2021, and to start training that water to move south, and then bring on the second pump at the completion of the 633. Those details are still being worked through. But the pumps would be up to 200 cubic feet per second, most likely 100 cubic feet per second at each pump. And it would be limited to the capacity of half of the combined inflows, so that we're just moving water through the WCA3B, the western part, or the Blue Shanty flowway, and not necessarily not drying it out. And again, the stage constraint in the L29 would be in effect, as well as other combined operation plans constraints. And then all the operations will be coordinated with the Corps and the interagency adaptive management teams and decomp physical model teams. So this slide shows the permit compliance monitoring that's associated with contract 1 on the L67A, L67C features in the temporary pumps. There'd be monitoring at the inflows at S631, 632, and 633 that are grabs that are biweekly when there's recorded flow to measure nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations, as well as there'd be recorders in there to measure dissolved oxygen pH, temperature, conductivity. And then the S633 AMI-P1 and S152 AMI-P2, those are the temporary pumps down on the L29, and the monitoring would happen there as the outflow monitoring, or outflow location, monitoring location with the same parameters. There's also what we're calling the Blue Shanty Marsh Station, CA3BS, and that station is internal to the Blue Shanty flowway and would have a monthly grab for total phosphorus in the marsh, as well as those physical parameters for DO, pH, temperature, and conductivity. And that marsh station has not been installed yet. We're still coordinating on where it's going to go, and it may eventually have more of a regional purpose than just the compliance monitoring plan for the permit. And then one thing that's important to mention is we have to have these compliance points in place before we operate any of the project features. And so It's likely that the temporary pumps installation will be the first operational features under the permit, and so we would have to be monitoring or be able to monitor once those temporary pumps are in place. And right now, I think we're thinking somewhere between July of 2021 and December of 2021 is when those would go in. All right, and now we're on to Jonathan's slides on the S333.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. Oops, it kicked me back here. Okay. I'm going to give a little bit of perspective on the S333N structure, its location, what we're monitoring under the permit. To kind of lead off in discussion, this is a much closer horizon need for incorporation. You know, we're currently, as October 27th here, we're in water year, the federal water year 2021. So ultimately, the compliance calculation for Appendix A, we have some time, and this water year ends September 30th, 2021, and we'll be reporting out our provisional results, I guess, January, February 2022, just to give you a time frame. So as Ken mentioned, these are both gated spillways, right, adjacent to each other. The only image I was able to find from directly above the aerial image is a little bit old, but I have some pictures showing a more current status. But basically, there was an inflow channel cut, and then this is the 333N structure itself. This is very similar to the existing 333, and then the discharge channel connecting to the L29. So basically the same upstream water body, same downstream water body. It was just built as a separate structure to facilitate that construction. Both of these structures are considered in the water control plan under COP, and currently 333N is just going through kind of punch list items under the contract, and we have a pending permit modification through DEP to utilize the full operation under COP. So currently it does have a permit for the construction and emergency operation that was issued in July 2018. And this modification will be to expand that, primarily to expand that operation so that it can be used just in conjunction with 333 to regulate the WCA water levels and deliver that water downstream. And we're looking at probably definitely, well, nothing's definite, but by the end of the year for that permit, hopefully a little sooner. So here's a more recent image of the two structures looking from the downstream side. So hovering over the L29 east of 333 and looking back to the west, northwest, you can see the two structures. 333 is on the left, 333 north is on the right. The confluence of the canals beyond the structures, and then conservation area 3A in the distance. Tamiami Trail is on the left, the highway. Now on the upstream side, I want to show a little detail of our monitoring location. This is right on the, if you're standing on the north of these structures, looking south, on the edge
of the L67A. On the left, you can see the 333N monitoring, the water quality monitoring platform here. It's kind of right on the angle corner of the inflow channel, and the two structures are to the south here, downstream the L67. The opposite perspective, looking from standing on the 333N new structure through the inflow area to the north up the L67A, you can see the 333N water quality monitoring platform here.
Hey, John, this is Donato. Quick question.
Yes,
is this where we've been collecting the 333 North samples this entire time, or is this going to be initiated in the future?
Excellent clarification. The platform was constructed, and I'll just quickly bounce back to earlier image here. Before this intake channel was constructed, we did quite a while ago start monitoring at platform up here. So the intake kind of curls around here, and this monitoring, which just up, is going to be long-term in the same location. So the monitoring location, in other words, the monitoring location for 333N in its ultimate condition is the same point that has been monitored for almost 2 years now.
All right, thanks.
Okay. We have been collecting just grab data here. We installed an auto sampler recently. The contract called for a fixed intake. A couple reasons for, this auto sampler is kind of for our just informational purposes, to inform the district, to inform the TOC, whoever, not required by permit or mandate, but we did want to, as much as possible, get comparable auto sampler data for our decision making. It will be modified, so the data stream that's coming in, I'll provide an update at some point in time when the float is installed, which is going to, again, just take away one more variable of potential differences. So we're gonna install a float similar to what is at 333. Of course, there are some other challenges with the auto sampler at 333. We're investigating, or at least have been discussed during the meetings. I guess that update will come a little later, but with the geometry and how much turbulence, I think this is a much better sampling location for collecting the actual flow that's going through the structure, as far as the auto sampler is concerned. But there will be the one change, since you asked about the location, it will go from a fixed to a floating auto in the future. So our permitted parameters that we collect at 333N essentially mimic what we've been collecting at 333. I think the point that I really want to make is, no matter what we have in the permit, we're going to continue to collect the biweekly TP at all the Shark River Slough inflow stations on the same day. So we'll maintain that phosphorus grab collection for the settlement agreement Appendix A compliance determination at this site on those same days. And that's the way it's been collected for quite some time.
leading up to it. You know, we recognize that there hasn't been flow through that structure, so some of the dynamics could change. So kind of zooming back out for a moment to start summarizing things, the Appendix A utilizes these 4 distinct structures, 12A through D, and then also uses the, as I had explained in the quarterly report, all the inflows to the L29, 333, 355A, B, and a portion of 356 that comes through 335. So we're going to continue operating and monitoring at 333. 333 ends. Operation is pending and will, once permitted, be consistent with COP. We have been doing the grab monitoring weekly for TP, and this increases the potential volumes to Northeast Shark River Slough once we're operating under COP with that structure in conjunction with 333. And then the temporary pumps that Ken had described can add 25 to 55,000 acre feet. You know, we're still projecting based on the historical information we have, and out of the projected COP inflow, you know, that's 4 to 8%, if my math is correct, and of the inflows to the L29. So they're relatively small input, but releases will be consistent with the Temiami Trail flow formula under COP, as Ken had mentioned. So our monitoring strategy will consider those requirements for Shark River Slough that we discuss in the upcoming periods. And the new inflow for those temporary pumps, to reiterate, is expected July to December of 2021. And those temporary pumps would be operational until the levee degrade on the downstream end of the Blue Shanty flowway into the L29, which is expected around 2025 or 2026 when contract 26 is initiated. So as far as the Appendix A equation, you know, we had spent quite a bit of time on 356 pumped inflows. And I just wanted to mention the contract that Ken mentioned is to increase the volume at 356. So that pump station will be rebuilt and the overall capacity increased, but it'll be essentially the same location. So that won't change our considerations for Appendix A calculation of compliance. The 333, 333N, you know, it's basically a complex. So those inflows will be treated pretty much the same. We have temporary pumps here and the whole system, Blue Shanty flowway. So in this region, the features that we discussed today, conceptually, it's more simple than the discussions we've had at 356. It's coming from the conservation areas into the park. That part is fairly simple. I guess technically we just get into the monitoring logistics of that and how those flows and concentrations are represented for the equation. So our current method, 1.5 that we're reporting, pulled this from the handout that was posted in last quarter's meeting. And the limit consists of all the S12s plus 333, 355A, 355B, and that term that's the minimum of 356 and 335 on a daily basis. So the sum of all the inflows for the water year is considered for the long-term limit calculation each 12 months. The flow weighted mean
calculation is done on the biweekly compliance sampling event days, and we utilize a combination of the flow and the TP measured on those days, all aggregated together as part of the L29 east, since a portion of that leaves through 334 and does not go to Shark River Slough. These are all kind of just multiplied by the fraction of the total inflows that go to Shark River Slough. So there's an adjustment there for all those that accounts for the 334 outflows. So looking forward to what might need to be discussed or considered is what other terms are added. So we have 333 North, and we have in the short term, then we're going to have temporary pumps added into the L29. And then eventually the L29 levy degrade. So assumedly we would add flow terms to account for that total flow from the WCAs into Shark River Slough. And we would add terms to make sure that the concentrations are represented and tracked on an annual basis. Just as an example, not really something I intended to go into deep dive on, but as an example of, we typically do concurrent monitoring, or have historically done a lot of concurrent monitoring before making decisions on how the eventual compliance monitoring will take place. So in this condition, over this period, I've plotted from October 2018, when that new S333 platform was completed and we began taking grab samples for TP on a weekly basis there. We have the 333 TP grabs, which every other one, basically the biweekly, were used for the compliance. And then we have also the weekly 333 and TP grabs. So although not every one is on each other exactly, we do see a pretty consistent pattern. Now this is with only 333 flowing. So during this period, obviously 333N was not operating. So essentially the water going past 333N was going to 333. So we'll have to see if this continues in the future, but this may be an example of some data that we would look at in the future to determine how ultimately we want to represent whether we need to pair 333 and its concentration separately from 333N and its concentration, or it would be practical and technically advisable to actually combine those as a complex with a single concentration and flow aggregated value, I guess, for efficiency purposes. But that's an example of what we can do when we start collecting data in advance and we have a little time to make a decision. So that's all the slides I have. So I'll open up to questions for both me and Ken. And I know there's a lot of information presented, so I'm looking forward to some TOC discussion. Thanks.
Hey, this is Donato. Going back to Ken on slide 6, you seem to mention that a station would be installed in the marsh for the new station CA3BS. Is that a physical installation that you're describing? And if so, what is something being affixed to it, or what's the logic of a physical marsh station?
Ken, do you want me to take that?
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I think most of our sampling is in the marsh, going to be done by probably, I don't either airboat or helicopter there, and not necessarily Donato, likely just an indicator of the location, as most of our sampling is done. So I don't think there's any permanent installation that will likely be needed in that location. But I can follow up and make sure.
No, that would be consistent with most of our physical monitoring out in the marsh. My second question is, is it being monitored there by another name, or do we have intentions of collecting baseline information as in advance of this construction activity?
So right now, I don't think there's a station there. There's one to the east that's I can't remember the name of it. It's on the other side of kind of where the Airboat Association is, kind of north in the marsh. But we would want to collect, as best we can, the baseline. And I think in terms of the permit, we're supposed to have these kind of ready to go at operations, but I think we're intended to get some baseline as well.
And this is Julie. The other thing to keep in mind, and Ken did mention this, is the precise location of this I don't think has been officially determined yet. There's some additional considerations on other possible monitoring that may need to be conducted in the area that we're working on.
Hey, Ken, this is Frank. The monitoring station that you were just alluding to is CA3B2. That's within the ambient water quality stations within 3B.
That's the one. Yeah, I couldn't remember the exact name, but yeah, it's east of where the future Blue Shanty levee will go.
Yes, sir. Correct.
All right, thanks.
Do we have other comments or questions for Ken or John?
John, Ken, this is Frank with DEP. Just a couple questions real quick. So this is mostly informational, right? So you're not looking for a decision made by the TOC today regarding the 333N, as you explained. It's kind of a complex there. And it didn't seem like the S633 or the S633, temporary pump station on the L29 is a maybe in June, July of 2021. Did I hear that correctly? And
so I think it would actually be it's the 632 AMIP2, the one that's kind of towards the east that's connected to the DPM gap. I think that would be the first one. Yeah.
And that's 100 CFS temporary pump station there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we've seen that in the past there when 3B has been high under emergency conditions. So, okay. So
yes, we've had temporary pumps installed at 355A, like adjacent to those.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So, but that's a maybe, right? So that's like, if everything aligns and we can get the pumps out there in the June, July, under certain circumstances, not to trip a couple of constraints, either our thresholds in 3B are L29, like you said, 8.5 feet. And I'm just saying there's a couple of nuances there, if my understanding is correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say it's a strong maybe. Just I know we're in discussions of how to do it, but I think we do intend to put them there because it's the active vegetation management is ongoing and it's kind of being done in phases. So I think right now they're doing that green sort of squiggly lines. That's the historic sloughs where the active vegetation is going on. And so right now, I think they're doing the phase 1, which is kind of around that DPM gap down south to the agricultural ditch. And I want to say the phase 2 is what's kind of around the CA3BS potential station. so that vegetation is being treated. And I think the idea is to get that temporary pump station in as soon as we can to start training that water to flow south that currently flows east.
Yeah, Frank, this is Dan Crawford. Just to chime in on Ken's points, I agree. I think it is a strong maybe. The schedule is where the maybe comes in mostly. I think it's a very optimistic that we'll be able to get that first temporary pump installed by next July. I think it's much higher probability that we'll be able to get that first pump, installed by December, which was kind of the bracket that Ken laid out. And then the other piece, just to be clear, a little different than the way the temporary pumps at 355 Bravo were handled, is that the temporary pumps at 355 Bravo that were done under emergency continued to operate consistent with the 333 structure. The way that the temporary pumps that are proposed for CEPP South would operate is that they would result in a in-kind reduction from the 333 North complex. So whatever the Tamiami Trail flow formula target that comes out of COP would be delivered through the combination of 333 North and the temporary pumps during those conditions. So there is a slight difference that the intent of the interim operations that Ken went through is that there would be no net increase in flows going to Northeast Shark River Slough with versus without the pumps. Over.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for the clarification. I appreciate it. So is the question at hand to TOC is that we need to start thinking about the potential inflow from that temporary pump station for future water year considerations?
Yes, that's exactly it. And we're not, as I think you may have mentioned a few minutes ago, we're not asking people to decide today, but you guys now have materials to look at, and we'll all need to rally around in making sure we're doing the correct calculations for compliance. And that would be for the water year, I think that we're currently in. If not this water year that we just started, it would be the following, depending on when those temporary pumps are installed. And same thing on the 333 North, although that is relevant to the current water year that we just started. So.
Yeah, I believe this is Dan, Julie. I believe that the meeting minutes from August reflect that we would take a similar tact with 333 North as we did previously with 356, is that as soon as that structure starts flowing, we would start tracking kind of the width without comparison for purposes of the compliance calculations, so that we'll be in a position to make a final decision down the road, certainly within the next year at most, I would expect, as to how we formally update 333 North in the compliance equations.
I agree, Dan. And some of you may recall we've done some dual tracking and looking at data multiple times over the last couple of decades, actually, as different features come online. So, yeah, we really wanted to get this out here today to make sure everybody's aware of what's coming soon and soon thereafter, so that we can kind of get that all in everybody's heads going forward.
Yeah, and this is Ken. I'll just add, doing the monitoring at the pump stations is going to be relatively easy because it's a localized source. But I think we need to consider down the road once the levee is degraded. You mentioned the dual sampling, but does that need to kind of go in too, so that we have an understanding of how they relate, and then how the compliance happens once the levee's degraded? That's for later down the road, but if it could be considered at this point in time, it may be very helpful for the calculation later.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ken. When the original Appendix A subteam started 100 years ago, it seems like it was only 6, I think, but the original idea was for that group to think long term, and we just didn't really get there. Or I say we, I wasn't really part of the team, but so we're kind of faced with this incremental process here. It's totally fine, but I also would ask folks to be thinking futuristically as we discuss these various nuances of the monitoring and the compliance calculations. It would be nice to not have to constantly be adjusting as we go forward, although that may be where we land.
Yeah, Julie, this is Dan. I would, and Ken and I have had this conversation. I think this does need to get run through the CEPP water quality monitoring subteam a little bit more, but in the future, so while we can monitor the nutrient concentrations at the temporary pumps over the course of the next, let's say 5 years, once those pumps get deployed, we won't be able to monitor at that same location 6+ years down the road because the levee is going to be degraded and the upstream basin where those pumps are will be removed. And so it might be worth giving some thought to as we site that CA3BS station, to make sure that we have, make sure those stations are situated in the correct place to potentially support long-term monitoring. Because if we're looking to account for the nutrient load going into northeastern Shark River Slough, it may not be appropriate to use the concentrations that are coming in at 632 and 633. It may be more appropriate to measure the concentrations further downstream within the flowway before it crosses the line going into the L29 canal. So we want to make sure as we site that station or contemplate whether there should be 2 stations within the flowway, that we're giving, not just thinking about the next 5 years while we're operating the pumps, but we're also thinking about where we want to be after the levee is degraded, and we're looking at if this Appendix A compliance remains in place at that time, what would we need in terms of data to be able to support that compliance calculation?
Sure, that's a really good point. I'm personally not sure a marsh station is appropriate for the way we're doing Appendix A right now, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Any other comments for Ken and John? Okay, I do not see any hands raised. I don't see anybody unmuting. So I'm going to assume that's a no. Just know that we will continue to visit this subject as appropriate as we go along here. And I got to tell you, this particular slide that you guys have up is actually kind of exciting. It's nice to see things happening and what we're foreseeing for the relative near future. That's pretty cool in my mind. So, all right, great. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate you bringing this forward.
Okay, Lisette, I passed you back control if you want to exit that presentation. You can.
Okay, and you could probably just put up the blank TOC slide if you'd like. That would be great. Our next agenda item is the follow-up discussion of the exceedance at Shark River Slough for the federal water year 2019. Without reading through 9 pages of notes to you guys, at the last meeting, we agreed that the exceedance was not error or extraordinary natural phenomenon. Donato did some great presentations. We discussed, it appeared that perhaps the exceedance may be due to localized conditions. We also agreed that we would discuss ASAP within 2 weeks with our principals so that something could be addressed quickly. And I think I have a good news story here from what I heard back from my own principal. So let me relay that to you guys and then we can talk about it as needed. First of all, the principals did meet and discuss this, and they may have reached a consensus. I think they did, but we don't have a signed memo or anything. That's kind of still circulating. So there's a memo circulating, but I will say I'm pleased to note that the principals have agreed this issue is a priority. The principals also, again, according to what I've been told, have agreed that the agencies need to invest in figuring out exactly what's going on and have agreed to do some additional research. So, and that would also help to pinpoint exactly where the phosphorus is coming from, which I think is part of our issue here. So an S333 working group has been established outside of the TOC, and I'm happy to report they had their first meeting when I was on vacation, and they've met 2 or 3 times now to get things going. So they're going to be proposing basically a scope of work to the principals to do some research to help guide us, and also us being the agencies here, not necessarily the TOC, but it also would allow the agencies to better consider some of the options that were proposed at the last meeting. So the team is supposed to evaluate engineering solutions and conduct some additional research and monitoring. And once the principals approve the scope of work being proposed by this group, they're going to go ahead and look at these things. If it is determined it's a TOC issue or the principals want it brought back to the TOC, it will be. And once we understand that the group has some results and some agreed upon solutions, that information would be provided to the public and at the direction of the principals also back here to the TOC. So that's kind of the word I've gotten. I do want to mention now, before I forget, if we do get a memo, we think there's a memo coming, we will get that posted out on the TOC website as soon as we receive it, and we'll notify you guys of that. So that's what I'm getting from my principal, and maybe Frank, is this the same sort of understanding you have?
Hey, Julie, that's exactly my understanding. Is my I think we were just a couple of days behind on getting the memo prior to this meeting, but like you were saying earlier, I do concur with your statement that a memo is forthcoming to the TOC representatives and illustrating exactly what you just said. So that we're in concurrence with your statement.
Okay, great, thanks. And rather than run around the table to my right, I see Dan is unmuted. Dan, did you have some comments here?
I do, Julie. Thank you. This is Dan Crawford. I would just add that while I agree with your characterization of the path forward is that the principals are going to continue to receive input from the technical interagency subteam that includes some cross-representation from membership on the TOC. I would reiterate my agency's perspective is that because of the extensive discussion we've had on this Water Year 19 shark overflow exceedance at the past 2 Technical Oversight Committee quarterly meetings, I believe we owe a back brief at minimum to the TOC on what the ultimate path forward that comes out of that process. Even if no actions are directed to the TOC for further consideration, I would just like to emphasize that I believe we still owe the TOC, the Special Master, Department of Justice, our agency technical staff, the public, we owe them a back brief on what the path forward will be and what the ultimate schedule that the principals are tracking for resolution of this additional data collection and research. Over. Okay,
thank you. Understood completely. And I think the principals are considering that here as part of this, alternate or parallel path that we're going through. So that's great. Thank you, Dan. Donato or Lori, did you guys have something you wanted to add or discuss?
This is Donato. You captured in your brief summary of what the principals are agreeing to or moving forward with, that you captured that from my understanding. So I don't have anything.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, same here, Julie. This is Lori with the Refuge. While we didn't make our 2-week deadline, it's a little bit longer. We did. I do definitely agree with how you characterized the process. At least that's what I'm hearing from my principal.
Okay, good. Well, I am kind of, this has been kind of an interesting meeting today. I was excited to see the slides in the previous presentation. And I think this direction from the principals is really cool as well. It actually will enable some folks to continue or leverage some research that may have already started under other forums too. So I I think that's really great. And we'll look to get the memo from the principals and get some additional feedback about when and what comes back to the TOC. So I really want to thank you guys. I know several of the TOC reps are actually part of this working group, so I appreciate you guys participating in that. I don't have anything else on our agenda. This would be a good time for us to open it up to public comment. So for those of you who are calling in as a member of the public, if you could please use the raise hand feature, we can call on you to get any comments you have as we wind up the meeting here this morning. And I see Melody has her hand raised, so could we please unmute Melody? Where did Melody go?
Okay. Hi, could you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we gotcha.
Yes, great. This is Melody from the Everglades Foundation. Good morning, everyone. I just want to congratulate Jonathan and Ken for their presentations. Very informative content. I very much appreciated the presentation of CEPP South and the planning for restoration. I just look forward to hear more about how agencies will adapt Appendix A to include those changes. I'm also pleased to hear that agencies are planning or will be planning to invest what's happening at S33 structure. These are really great news. It will be great if this new working group can present to the TOC, but these are great news. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you so much. Our next person, who I think I know who it is, but it doesn't have your name on there, so I'm not going to say your name. I'll let you do that. Your phone number ends in 5372. If you could please unmute him, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, this is Drew Martin with the Loxahatchee Group of the Sierra Club. I just want to agree with all Melody's comments. Really appreciate everything. I don't have any additional comments, but I just want to let you know I'm here, I'm listening, and appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Drew. We really appreciate it, and I'm always glad to have you guys on the line here. Do we have anybody else who has called or dialed to listen in who would like to comment? We'll give you a second or so, because I know sometimes it's hard to remember if you're *6ing or *9ing. So. All right, I am not seeing anyone else, so I would like to go ahead and bring the meeting to a close. I do want a couple of things we got to do. First of all, I didn't actually write down action items per se, but if we have any, I know Chris will capture them. He's doing a great job with his notes. We will be asking you guys for future agenda items either soon or a few weeks before the next meeting. And we do have a couple of dates for the next quarterly meeting. Violetta was kind enough to project out the auditorium availability. If we decide to meet in the auditorium, it's available on these dates. So that's January 26th or February 2nd. I have looked at my own calendar. I don't have anything on it for those 2 days, so I'm good with either date. Do you guys have any preference for the next quarterly meeting?
Hey, Julie, this is Lori with the Refuge. I need to try to make it January 26th if we can, please.
Okay, what about the others? Are you able to make January 26th?
Dan, January 26th works for me.
Okay, Donato, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, this is Donato. The 26th works for me, but just to be contrary, I want to do it on Groundhog Day. No, I'm just playing.
You know, I was thinking about that. If we meet on January 26th, we can pretend it's Groundhog Day. I'm sure it'll feel like it. Mr. Barquette?
That works.
Okay, and Frank, I think you're the other one I see here.
Yes, ma'am, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, so we'll do it on January 26th, and because Donato and I are fans of Groundhog Day, we can pretend it's Groundhog Day. How's that?
Works for me.
All right,
This
great.
is Lori. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate that.
Well, we'd like to make it as easy as we can for everybody to participate, so we try our best. All right, great. I don't have anything else, so I would like to go ahead and close the meeting. I really thank everybody for participating this morning. Really great discussion. I think some really great news, and we'll look forward to more good news as we move forward with restoring the Everglades. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.